Studying the era of heresy and the reasons why a portion of the legions deemed it right to turn away from the emperor, one can easily conclude that in some cases the rebellion could be called justified. The story of Primarch Mortarion is one of those capable of reinforcing the thought that at times the emperor was too cruel and set his treacherous sons against himself. Following the Death Master who betrayed his father was his entire legion. However, among the Space Marines, there was one who did not forget the oaths given. Our story today is about Nathaniel Garro. A loyal defender of the Emperor, he sacrificed everything for the salvation of mankind. He was born on Terra in a small state of techno-barbarians called Albia, located in the southeastern part of Europe, in the days when Nathaniel joined the 14th Legion. It was named the Dusk Raiders, and such words as barbarous and Mortarion were still unknown to anyone. The Dusk Raiders received their unofficial name because of their famed tactic of attacking the enemy after dark. The enemies knew they would be annihilated by night and therefore sought to surrender before sunset. In those years, the 14th Legion's armour did not yet bear green. Their armour resembled the time-dimmed white marble. Right shoulder pads shone with a crimson gloss, symbolizing the role of the Dusk Raiders as the merciless and punishing hand of the Emperor. But everything changed when the sons of the Master of Mankind found themselves separated from him and scattered across the galaxy. The 14th Legion, like the others, embarked on the Great Crusade, beginning the era of humanity's ascension. Nathaniel Garro was with the Emperor when he discovered Ferrus Manus on Medusa, Robute Guilliman on Macraga, Magnus the Red on Prospero, and Sanguinius on Baal. After each reunion, the Master of Mankind entrusted his sons with command of the legions, created in the image and likeness of the mighty Primarchs. However, discovered on Barbarous, Mortarion stood out from the other sons of the Emperor, extremely gaunt in appearance. Garro, along with the other Terran-born Space Marines, was beside his genetic father on the day he assumed the mantle of Primarch. But over time, the number of warriors from the throne world began to diminish, giving way to those born on Barbarous, and by the end of the Great Crusade, in the Legion, remained only a small part of the veterans of the Unification Wars. In moments of despair, Nathaniel imagined times when all his brothers in arms would be replaced by the natives of Barbarous, meaning the old traditions of the Dusk Raiders would finally vanish. The warrior did not want this moment, because he knew that with the spirit of terror, a part of the nobility of the 14th Legion would perish. Adherence to old traditions and a certain degree of stubbornness caused disagreements between Garro and the other captains. They considered the warrior straightforward as an arrow. The schism worsened after Nathaniel refused an invitation to join a warrior lodge. Space Marines from Barbarous, on the other hand, considered ancient traditions knowledgeable but hindering the potential of the Death Guard. The rituals and customs were seen along with the deaths of the first Astartes from the 14th Legion on the fronts of the Great Crusade, and this trend accelerated after the Emperor's return to Terra. Following one of the former traditions, Garro had a personal mortal servant whose main task was to care for the Space Marines' armour. This practice emerged in the early years of the Legion. Those recruits who for some reason failed to pass the Astartes trial but could no longer be sent home remained with the captains as workers. Caleb Arryn, servant and advisor to Garro, failed the selection and was faced with the choice of either returning to Barbarous with dishonour or voluntarily parting with life. Nathaniel saved Arryn by offering him the role of his aide, which he repaid with years of loyal service. However, some Space Marines regarded this tradition with contempt and did not miss the opportunity to offend Nathaniel Garro's servant. The Death Guard differed from other legions in command structure and hierarchy of captains. According to tradition, the 14th Legion could not have more than 7 great companies, although these units were more numerous than similar ones in the Space Wolves or Blood Angels. Moreover, other legions accorded special honour to the captain of the first company. At the same time, the Death Guard equally respected the captains of the 2nd and 7th Great Companies. The tradition of honouring the leader of the 7th Company dates back to the Unification Wars, when the Emperor personally awarded Nathaniel with a mark of distinction. Garro was an experienced veteran of numerous campaigns to bring planets into Imperial compliance, where he fought shoulder to shoulder with warriors from other legions. He met and befriended Captain Garviel Loken of the Lunar Wolves during the Kalth campaign against the Orcs, and also became close friends with Saul Tarvitz of the Emperor's Children. The two Space Marines owed each other their lives after battling a Psyker in the Istvan campaign. There, Garro was seriously wounded and would likely have died if not for Tarvitz's intervention. As a sign of brotherly union, the warriors carved small symbols on each other's armour, which formed the Imperial Aquila during a handshake. At the sunset of the Great Crusade, Garro earned high praise from the Sisters of Silence, with whom he participated in the pursuit of the Jorgol. Mortarion also could not fail to recognize the outstanding talents of his warrior and noted Nathaniel with a unique yet honorable award. The Primarch offered Garro to drink with him a beverage of exceptional toxicity. By demonstrating that in the galaxy there is no poison capable of bringing a Death Guard to their knees. As is known, even in the early stages of training, recruits of the 14th Legion voluntarily subject themselves to the effects of chemical agents, deadly viruses, and various poisons, developing resistance. Mortarion rewarded only the worthiest with a chalice of toxins, and Garro understood this but still regarded such a reward without enthusiasm. The Space Marine's body resisted the supposed drink. However, refusing the Primarch was impossible. After the poison intoxicated Nathaniel, Mortarion began the interrogation, in which he attempted to determine to whom Garro's loyalty belonged and whether there was a chance to sway him to the side of the warrior. For the captain avoided membership in the Warrior Lodge, it could not be without arousing suspicion. Nathaniel's answer disappointed the Primarch. The Astartes believed that regardless of any value the Lodge might hold, they were only dangerous because they were founded on secrets, from which troubles begin. But even after these words, Mortarion did not lose hope of turning Garro to Horus's side, and even took him with him on the Vengeful Spirit as an advisor. The 7th Company of the Death Guard fought alongside the 1st Company of the Emperor's Children on the planet Istvan Extremis, where they faced a Psyker known as the Warsinger. There Garro received severe injuries and lost a leg, but was saved from death by the efforts of Fabius Bile. The bionic prosthesis irritated Nathaniel, as it caused the warrior to limp for some time. The apothecaries did not consider Garro healed and declared him temporarily unfit for active combat duty. The 7th Company also could not join the rest of the region while their commander was unable to fight. For this reason, Garro and his warriors avoided being sent to the surface of Istvan III. Nathaniel was tasked with organizing tactical support for the assault on Coral City. However, it was clear to the traitorous part of the Legion that, upon revealing what was happening on the surface, Garro would never side with Horus. Therefore, Grulgor, the Death Guard's second captain, who was on the same ship with Nathaniel, has decided to kill a Terranian loyal to the Emperor. The Eisenstein on which the events unfolded was a small starship, classified as an escort vessel. Its dimensions did not exceed 2 kilometers, and it did not carry on board the Space Marines intended for landing. For this reason, the ship stayed in high orbit and did not plan to descend. The Primarch tasked it with intercepting possible evacuation shuttles of the enemy, so the captain was surprised when Grulgor ordered the ship to move to a lower orbit. Garro suspected something terrible in all that was happening, but like most loyal to the Emperor, the Astartes could not fathom the scale of the nightmare that Horus was about to begin, as he himself lacked the cunning. But Nathaniel's mortal servant Arin set out to track the actions of Grulgor to find out what exactly the second squad had delivered to the Eisenstein. The servant saw cargo consisting of glass capsules with a dark liquid, and also noticed workers replacing the contents of the ship's missiles with this mysterious substance. And this scene was observed by the apothecary of the 7th Squad of the Astartes, who guessed that the cargo delivered to the Eisenstein was bombs with the Life Eater virus. This weapon was prohibited for use within Imperial territories and was only deployed in extreme circumstances against the vilest Xenos. Such weapons of mass destruction were allowed in the arsenals of only the largest ships. Therefore, Grulgor had delivered the bombs to the Eisenstein from the flagship of the Death Guard fleet. At the first stage of the assault, Garro's team noticed unplanned movements in their combat sector, followed by a message from Andronius, the Lord commanding the Emperor's children. Initially, the Eisenstein crew assumed that the ambitious Eidolon had decided against all odds to make a landing on Istvan III to earn his share of glory. However, it soon became clear that a lone Thunderhawk was trying to escape from a group of pursuing interceptors. Andronius sent a message to the Eisenstein ordering the destruction of the transporter, supposedly for retreating from the orders of Horus. However, the Thunderhawk also contacted the ship of the Death Guard and told a completely opposite story. This warrior had turned away from the Emperor and with him a part of the legions. It was highly likely that these words belonged to someone else. Garro would not have listened to them and would have destroyed the shuttle. However, the voice belonged to his comrade Saul Tarvitz, in whose nobility and loyalty Nathaniel had no doubt. After a few minutes of confusion, the order came through to destroy the Thunderhawk. But the firing coordinates were altered in such a way that the interceptor ships were actually the ones destroyed. This allowed Tarvitz to reach the surface of Istvan III and warn the loyal brothers about the imminent virus bombing. Garro's squad witnessed their commander not following a direct order for the first time, breaking official duties and possibly tarnishing the honor of the Death Guard. But the warrior did not stop there. He instructed the crew to contact Andronius and inform Eidolon that the Thunderhawk had been destroyed, its explosion also affecting the group of pursuers. Afterward, Garro calmed his battle brothers, explaining to them that Saul Tarvitz was a paragon of honor, and his words could not be lies. The unfolding scenario horrified the captain of the Death Guard, but along with the realization that Horus was capable of betrayal came an even darker thought. The warrior could not have acted without the participation of his brothers, the Primarchs. Hence, Mortarion, he was also one of the leaders of the rebellion. Appearing on the bridge, Caleb Arin, a mere boy, added to Nathaniel's worries by reporting that Grulgor and his warriors were loading the main guns with life-eater virus bombs. With only 2 space marines and a mortal servitor by his side, Garro stood against the traitorous captain and his contingent. Confronted by Nathaniel, Grulgor justified his betrayal by claiming the Emperor had abandoned the legions and fled to Terra, also giving a bunch of politicians the right to decide the fate of the Astartes. But in the view of Horus's follower, people who had no understanding of what war was, had no right to infringe upon freedom. In the ensuing skirmishes, where the city's forces were significantly outmatched, the 7th captain narrowly avoided death from a bolt pistol shot. Grulgor aimed at his head. However, Caleb Arin managed to use his own stab gun, which hit the body of a Death Guard's bolter and altered its trajectory, steering the shot away from Nathaniel. In response, Grulgor threw a combat knife at the servitor, mortally wounding him. At the same moment, a projectile that missed Garro struck one of the spheres with a viral warhead, putting everyone aboard at risk. With his last strength, the dying servitor rushed to the emergency switches and activated the closing of the blast doors. Garro and his 2 battle brothers managed to slip into the next section, while the group of traitors, along with Caleb Arin, perished in terrible agony. After this, Nathaniel returned to the 70 of his warriors on the Eisenstein and told them about the battle with Grulgor, the sacrifice of the mortal servitor, and what the traitors had planned. The truth was horrifying. Grulgor and Eidolon were not 2 treasonous souls plotting evil for their own ends, but warriors in a new war that would begin any moment. For their actions were nothing less than the execution of orders from the War Master himself. During the discussion, the Death Guard concluded that Garro's words matched those conversations that had been held in the warrior lodges in recent months. Comparing the discontented comments of some brothers about the Emperor with the fact that the detachment for the assault on Coral City had been personally selected by Horus, Nathaniel realized that had it not been for his injury, he himself would now be on the surface of Istvan III, unaware of the death sentence issued. Garro and the 70 survivors were determined to reach Terra to inform the Emperor of Horus's betrayal. All the warriors aboard vowed on the sword of the 7th captain of the Death Guard. promising to deliver the news to Terra at any cost. For some time, Nathaniel contemplated using the full power of the Eisenstein's Vox transmitter to broadcast the truth of the betrayal to the entire 63rd Fleet, thus warning the noble warriors, like Gaviel Loken and Tarik Torgadon from the Sons of Horus, and other Space Marines who remained loyal to the Emperor. However, such a warning would cost the lives of everyone aboard the Eisenstein, thus making the transmission of information to Terra impossible. Garro was forced to choose between a group of warriors close to him on the surface of Istvan III and his duty. He decided to inform the flagship of the Death Guard fleet about an alleged malfunction of the nuclear reactor, allowing the frigate to move to a remote area without suspicion. This trick could only buy a little time, but no other reason to leave the positions was found. However, before the Eisenstein moved, a Thunderhawk with Nathaniel Garro landed on its board, claiming that he was no longer a son of Horus. Together with the experienced Space Marine came 3 valuable mortals, Literatus Kirill Sinderman, chronicler Mercedes Ollerton, and Euphrati Keeler, the latter of whom believed in the divinity of the Emperor and over time was named the first living saint. Considering the movement of the Eisenstein suspicious, the first captain of the Death Guard, Typhus, followed the frigate with his battleship, Terminus Est. In the process of the chase, Garro's ship received severe damage, lost all its astropaths and navigator, and along with them, the ability to warp jump and interstellar communication. Nevertheless, Nathaniel still ordered the crew to make a blind transition to the Imperium, just to get the Eisenstein out of the Istvan system. Being in the warp, the ship was immediately attacked by demons of Nurgle, who declared the entire legion of the Death Guard as belonging to him. The weakened Geller field could not protect the frigate as before, and the influence of the God of Decay resurrected Grulgor and his fighters on board. After quickly exiting the warp, the traitors fell dead again, but their actions left a bane trail on the ship and some of the warriors. The Eisenstein found itself hundreds of light years from the nearest inhabited world without the ability to warp, jump and contact allies. Then Nathaniel took a desperate step. He ordered to overload the warp engine and eject it into space, hoping that the detonation would reflect in the Imperium and attract the attention of some Imperial starship. It was the only chance to avoid perishing in the Black Void. Fortunately, the explosion became a beacon for the phalanx of the Imperial Fists, with Rogel Dawn on board. The 7th Legion was returning to Terra, where the Primarch was to take up the duties of the Praetorian. Dawn accepted Garro and his companions on the phalanx, and not immediately but eventually believed the information about the betrayal of Horus. The first words about it caused the anger of the Primarch, which almost led to the death of Nathaniel. However, the testimonies of the other passengers of the Eisenstein, including the words of Nathaniel Garro, ultimately made Dawn yield. The fortress monastery of the Imperial Fists headed to Terra, carrying the terrible news to the Emperor. But after arriving in the solar system, the trials of Garro did not end. The captain of the Death Guard, as well as everyone aboard the Eisenstein, were placed in the Somnus Citadel on the Moon. While the Emperor was deciding whether their evidence was truthful, one of the Space Marines from Garro's squad, wounded during a clash with the Plague Marines in the warp, succumbed to the temptations of Nurgle, and, to ease his own suffering, allowed corruption to take over him. This led to the warrior becoming the vessel for a greater demon, known as the Lord of Flies. He killed 2 Astartes who were holding vigil over the dying, and then set off to spread the foul chaos throughout the entire citadel of the Sisters of Silence. Nathaniel Garro fought the Lord of Flies on the barren surfaces of the moon, and ultimately crushed the demon with his fists. After this, Malcador the Sigillite appeared to the guard captain and Death, offering him to become a part of a new imperial organization, unlike any that existed at that moment. According to the Lord Regent, it was to include vigilant men and women, hunters capable of recognizing a mutant, traitor, sorcerer, or Xenos. The Emperor foresaw that the finale of the Horus heresy would come at a great cost, and he would no longer be able to actively participate in humanity's survival. But the Emperor also knew that the threat of chaos would not vanish with the defeated warrior. Experience had shown that the Space Marines were not immune to corruption as previously thought. Therefore, the Lord of Mankind entrusted one of his closest servants, the Sigillite, to scour the galaxy in search of those who would prove worthy of participating in the defense of the future, and explained this to him. The Lord Regent added that Garro's fate was now inseparably linked with the survival of all humanity. Receiving the seals of the Sigillite, Nathaniel set out in search of 7 other Space Marines loyal to the Emperor scattered across the galaxy. They were all to play the role of the first Wandering Knights, warriors on special secret missions from the Lord Regent. Some of them later formed the chapter of the Grey Knights, a militant division of the Ordo Malleus. Thus, in the fire of betrayal, the Inquisition was born. Upon starting his service to Malcador, the Sigillite, Garro removed all the insignias of the Death Guard from his armour and replaced them with the symbol of the personal seal of the Lord Regent. A symbol that later became known throughout the galaxy. The Sigillite provided Nathaniel with a set of Power Armour Mark VI Corvus, as well as master-crafted bolter with increased rate of fire. Additionally, the Space Marine received a device known as the Falsehood, which generated a psychic aura around him, distorting the warrior's appearance to the point of invisibility. From then on, when Nathaniel was asked to which legion he belongs, the warrior answered that he is from the Knights Errant. The first mission by the Order of the Sigillite was carried out on Calth, an agri-world located in the realm of Ultramar. There, the sons of Roboute Guilliman fought against the treacherous word-bearers, defending their homeland from traitors, while Garro slipped past the orbital fleet of the 17th Legion and landed on the surface of a devastated planet. By the direction of the Sigillite, he was tasked to find and deliver to Terra Tylos Rubio, a Space Marine and former librarian of the 21st Company of the Ultramarines. Following the enactment of the Council of Nicaea, many legions severely restricted the actions of their psychers. Some stripped them of their special equipment and demoted them to the ranks. Others isolated the librarians, locking them up like criminals in closed citadels. Yet, despite this, those warriors gifted and loyal to the Emperor endured the change in their status and no longer used their psychic abilities in battle. Tylos Rubio, who, like the rest of the Ultramarines on Calth, found himself in an extremely difficult situation, resisted the temptation to defy the Emperor's order and fight the advancing enemies with the librarian's gift. He wielded sword and bolter, ready to perish alongside his battle brothers. Finding him, Garro explained to the Ultramarine that he must leave his unit and head to Terra by order of the Lord Regent. The Space Marine's response was predictable. He could not abandon his comrades in the face of death, but Nathaniel approached this with respect and stood by Rubio's side, ready to help him fight against the word-bearers. The traitor's final attack drove the Ultramarines into a cave, where they were pursued by a squad of Cataphractii Terminator armors. Facing impending doom, Tylos Rubio realized he had no choice but to use his psychic powers to save his battle brothers. He unleashed a powerful energy wave that repelled the word-bearers and collapsed the underground tunnel, burying the enemies under tons of rubble. The remnants of the 21st Company were saved, but the price was high. The Ultramarines no longer wanted to look at Rubio, believing that breaking the Emperor's order could not be justified. Then Nathaniel Garro unsheathed his ancient sword, Libertas, and offered Rubio to swear an oath in which the librarian commits to following the orders of the Regent of Terra. Realizing that the Ultramarines no longer considered him part of the Legion, Rubio agreed. The next on the Sigillite's list was Mesa Varron of the World Eaters, who, like all others, refused to follow Horus in his madness. The Sigillite, and not to obey all his orders, thanks to the actions of Nathaniel Garro. Soon, the ranks of the new squad of the Lord Regent included Callian Zavin, Captain Seren of the Blood Angels, Garviel Loken of the Lunar Wolves, and the mysterious Black Shield, also known as the Nemean Reaver. When the gathering of warriors was complete, the Knights Errant headed to Luna to receive their first mission assignment from the Sigillite. All this time, Garro continued to follow rumours about Ephrati Keeler, now proclaimed a saint, searching for her on one of the Terran orbital stations. The warrior encountered a member of the Administratum, Gaetano Talari. discovering that part of the fleet was secretly transporting resources to Titan during Operation Othris. Tallery believed she had found traces of a traitorous conspiracy aiming to undermine the forces of the Imperium. Garro was willing to believe her due to her devotion to the Lectito Divinatus. Together they boarded the ship sent to Titan with materials for the construction of a new fortress monastery. However, after witnessing many mysterious processes and overcoming numerous difficulties, Garro and his companion eventually met with the Sigillite, with the Lord Regent explaining that what was happening was not part of a conspiracy, but the Emperor's plan, already intending to ensure humanity had protection from chaos after the end of the uprising. It was hard for Tallery to realize that the destructive forces would continue to threaten humanity even after the end of the Civil War. To end her suffering and keep the creation of the new project safe, the Sigillite ordered Nathaniel to execute the woman. The warrior refused to carry out such a cruel order, and then the Lord Regent came up with another solution. He entrusted Tallery with leading the project, making her responsible for the construction of new facilities on Titan. Returning to the throne world, Garro resumed his search for Keeler. During his investigation, he discovered hidden settlements named Salvaguardia, where a group of believers in the Lectito Divinatus was killed by unknown assailants. That's when Nathaniel met Sigismund, the first captain of the Imperial Fists, who reported that Keeler had awakened in him faith in the divinity of the Emperor. Soon it was discovered that the saint was being hunted by the assassin Aristide Kell, who had been sent on a mission to kill Horus at the very beginning of the uprising. After the failure, Kell was captured by traitors, who broke his mind through years of torture. Then, the assassin was reprogrammed against the Emperor and sent to Terra to kill Keeler. Knowing the central role of the saint in the growing cult of Emperor worship, Horus hoped to cause massive religious hysteria and further undermine stability on Terra. Aristide Kell and his ally from the Alpha Legion orchestrated a massacre in Salvaguardia, where Keeler preached and then tortured those who survived the atrocities. Seeking information on the whereabouts of the saint, he managed to locate a woman at the Hesperides orbital plate, where a group of believers in the Emperor were detained for violating the imperial truth. However, before the assassin launched his attack, another killer appeared, but then Garro emerged, defeating both opponents with his sword. Throughout the fight, the saint exhibited miracles of her own gift, sharing visions of the future, healing wounds, and halting time. To protect the killer from further assassination attempts, Nathaniel handed her over to Malcador the Sigillite, who placed her in a guarded prison beneath the Imperial Palace. Shortly before the siege of Terra began, Garro and the Wandering Knights were dispatched to eliminate a demonic infestation beneath the White Mountain. In this underground fortress, the Sisters of Silence, who had survived capture and torture by the forces of chaos, were held. Nathaniel was forced to battle the Lord of Flies again. The greater demon of Nurgle was defeated, but at the cost of the life of Mesa Varen. When the main fleet of the traitors burst from the warp into the Sol system, Malcador the Sigillite chose from the Wandering Knights 9 Psykers to present to the Emperor himself as the founders of a new order of Astartes. Now known as the Grey Knights, Garro was not among those chosen by the Lord Regent for dispatch to Titan. Instead, he was relieved of all duties and remained on Terra as an independent warrior without a master. Following vengeance against his former comrades and father, Garro and his loyal battle brothers joined the defense of the Imperial Palace, leading squads of warriors defending the Saturnine part of the wall, which the traitors mistakenly deemed sinister. In this battle, Nathaniel's group defeated the Justerin Terminators, and their leader, Falcus Kibre, was vanquished by the sword Libertas. Due to a mortal wound, the body rejected the demonic entity that inhabited it, and Garro expressed pity for the dying traitor before delivering a mercy blow. After this, Nathaniel and his companions encountered Ezekiel Abaddon, who managed to teleport away before Libertas could reach him. During the siege of Terra, Nathaniel once again met with Euphrati Keeler. However, it was then that the attack on the Imperial Palace by the Death Guard began. Led by the traitor Mortarion, He entered negotiations with his former captain and called upon him to rejoin the Legion. Deeming the Primarch's offer demeaning, Garro preferred to engage in a hopeless duel. Initially, Mortarion did not fight with his full strength, but upon receiving wounds, he flew into a rage and quickly slew the Space Marine. Then the Primarch summoned a multitude of insects, declaring that they would turn Nathaniel's corpse into a puppet, and he would eternally serve Nurgle as a vessel for the Lord of Flies. However, this did not happen, as Euphrati Keeler imbued Garro with the light of the Emperor. Inspired, the warrior found the strength to resist Mortarion. He was still weaker than the demonic Primarch, and his sword Libertus had been shattered. However, pierced by silence, Nathaniel forced himself to forget the pain and struck Mortarion in the neck with a shard of his blade. The last thing Nathaniel saw in the final moment of his life was the divine image of the Emperor.